The storm hit New Seoul Colony just after sunset. Rain hammered against the metal roof of Taemin Park's repair shop like angry fists. Lightning split the dark sky every few seconds, turning the workshop white for brief moments before plunging it back into shadows. Tae-min wiped grease from his hands and looked at the broken engine parts scattered across his workbench. Another day, another broken ship? Life on the frontier was hard, but at least it kept him busy. Busy meant less time to think about Mei Young, less time to remember how quiet the house felt without her laugh. "Daddy, the lights are flickering again," called 8-year-old Bio-ra from the small living area behind the workshop. She sat at the kitchen table, coloring pictures of spaceships with her worn crayons. "I know, sweetheart. The storm is messing with the power grid." "It will stop soon," Taemin said, walking over to check the electrical panel. The colony's power system was old and cheap. Everything on the frontier operated on tight budgets and hope. A loud crash of thunder made Bio-ra jump. She dropped her red crayon and looked toward the window with wide eyes. "That was really close, Daddy." Taemin moved to sit beside her, putting a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Just noise, Bio-ra. The storm can't hurt us in here." He picked up her dropped crayon and handed it back. "Show me what you're drawing." "It's a big ship that can fly through storms," she said, carefully coloring the wing of her spaceship bright red. "Like the ones that come to your shop, but bigger. And it has windows so the people inside can see the lightning." Before Taemin could respond, a sound cut through the rain and thunder. It was different from the storm noise, lower, more mechanical. Like metal screaming, Taemin stood up quickly and moved to the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, he could see something burning in the sky. A bright orange streak was falling toward the ground, getting larger and brighter every second. "Oh, get away from the window," he said quietly. "What is it, Daddy? A ship? And it's in trouble." The burning object crashed into the field behind Taemin's workshop with a sound like a mountain falling. The ground shook. Tools rattled off. The workbench. The lights went out completely. Bara grabbed her father's arm in the darkness. "Daddy, I'm scared." Taemin found his flashlight and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, showing Bio-ra's frightened face. "It's okay. Stay here while I look outside. Don't leave me alone. I won't go far, just to the back door. I need to see if anyone needs help." Taemin opened the rear door of his shop and stepped into the storm. Rain soaked through his shirt in seconds. The wind tried to push him backward. But through the rain and darkness, he could see something that made him forget about being wet and cold. A ship sat in the muddy field. But it wasn't like any ship he had ever seen. Most vessels that came through New Seoul Colony were basic human designs, square and practical. Built for moving cargo or families across space as cheaply as possible, this ship was different. It looked alive. The hull curved and flowed like it had grown instead of being built. Strange markings covered its surface, glowing soft blue even in the rain. Parts of it looked like metal, but other sections seemed organic. Like the shell of some deep-sea creature, steam rose from the ship's damaged hull. One wing was cracked and bent. Fluid that might have been fuel or blood leaked from several holes. In the side. As Taemin watched, a section of the hull opened with a hissing sound. Someone was coming out. The figure that emerged from the ship was tall and moved with careful grace despite the storm. At first, Taemin thought it might be human. But as lightning flashed again, he saw the truth. The pilot had 4 arms. Her skin reflected the lightning with an oily rainbow shimmer. She was beautiful in a way that seemed dangerous, like a knife made of crystal. When she turned toward Taemin's workshop, he could see her face was almost human except for the large, dark eyes and the way her features seemed too perfect. Like a statue carved by someone who had never seen a real person, she spotted Taemin, standing in his doorway, and began walking toward him. Her movements were smooth and controlled, showing no sign that the storm bothered her at all. When she got close enough to be heard over the wind, she began speaking. But the sounds that came from her mouth were nothing like human language. She clicked and whistled and made deep humming noises. Her 4 arms moved in complex patterns as she spoke, like she was painting pictures in the air. Te-min held up his hands and shook his head. I don't understand, he said loudly. The alien stopped, making the strange sounds, and tilted her head. She tried again, this time in what sounded like several different languages. None of them were human. Finally, she spoke in heavily accented but understandable standard human. Your language, difficult. Her voice was like music played through. Water, ship broken, need fix. You're hurt? Te-min said, pointing at her left arm. Dark fluid dripped from a cut near her elbow. She looked down at the wound with surprise, as if she had forgotten about it. Not important, ship important. Come inside, out of the rain. The alien hesitated. She looked back at her damaged vessel, then at Te-min's simple workshop. Her perfect features showed what might have been disgust or disappointment. Your tools. Primitive? She asked. They work, Te-min said simply. Another flash of lightning illuminated them both. The alien's dark eyes studied Te-min's face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her. I am Uniketh of the warrior clan Veltara, she said formally. My ship requires repair. You will help. It wasn't a request. I'm Te-min Park, he replied. And yes, I'll help. But first, let's get you out of this storm. Uniketh followed him into the workshop. When the door closed behind them, cutting off the wind and rain, the sudden quiet felt strange. Beora peeked around the corner from the kitchen area, her flashlight beam wavering as she tried to get a look at their unexpected visitor. Uniketh saw the child and froze completely. Her forearms went very still. For a moment, something that might have been pain flickered across her face. You have offspring, she said quietly. My daughter, where are the others? The community elders? The child raisers? Te-min frowned. It's just us. Uniketh's expression became confused and slightly shocked. Just you? Alone? This is not proper. It's how we do things here? The alien looked from Te-min to Beora and back again. She clearly didn't understand, but she didn't ask more questions. Instead, she turned her attention to the workshop, examining his tools and equipment with critical eyes. These are very basic, she said. They fix what needs fixing. My ship is not a simple human vessel. It is biomechanical, grown, not built. Your primitive tools may cause more damage. Te-min picked up his scanner and activated it. Let me take a look first. Then we'll see what's possible. Uniketh's forearms crossed in front of her chest in what was clearly a defensive gesture, but after a moment she nodded once. 3 days, she said. I require departure in 3 days. We'll see, Te-min replied, pulling on his rain jacket. First, let's see what we're dealing with. As they prepared to go back out into the storm, Beora called from the kitchen. Daddy, is the pretty lady staying for dinner? Uniketh's head snapped toward the child with surprise. Pretty? Te-min smiled despite everything. Beora finds everyone. Interesting. Don't mind her. But Uniketh continued to stare at the little girl with an expression that was hard to read. Something was bothering her about the child's presence, though she said nothing more. The storm was far from over. And Te-min was beginning to suspect that fixing Uniketh's ship would be the least complicated part of the next 3 days. The next morning brought clear skies and the strange sight of an alien ship in Te-min's backyard. Sunlight made the organic curves of Uniketh's vessel shimmer like oil on water. Up close, the damage looked even worse than it had in the storm. Te-min walked around the ship slowly, his scanner beeping as it analyzed the strange materials. The hull wasn't just metal. It felt warm under his hand, almost like skin. When he pressed against certain sections, they gave slightly as if the ship were breathing. Your scanner is too weak, Uniketh said from behind him. She had slept in the ship overnight, refusing Te-min's offer of a bed in the house. It cannot read biomechanical systems properly. Maybe not, Te-min replied, studying the readings. But it's telling me interesting things. This crack here isn't just in the hull. It goes deeper into what looks like a nervous system. Uniketh's forearms moved in what might have been surprise. You can see the neural pathways? If that's what these branching lines are, then yes. Taemin pointed to his scanner display. The damage follows the pattern. Like the ship felt pain when it was hurt. For the first time since meeting her, Uniketh looked at Taemin with something other than dismissal. Most repair technicians cannot understand this concept. They treat our ships like dead metal. Everything that works has a logic to it, Taemin said. I just need to figure out what your ship's logic is. They worked together for the next several hours. Uniketh opened access panels that were invisible until touched in exactly the right way. Inside, instead of wires and circuits, Taemin found things that looked like veins and organs. The ship's components pulsed with slow, steady rhythms. How do you repair something that's alive? He asked. Very carefully, Uniketh replied, and with tools designed for the purpose. She gestured at his equipment with obvious frustration. Your instruments are made for dead machines. They will cause rejection responses. Rejection responses? The ship will fight against foreign materials. Like a body-fighting infection? Taemin nodded slowly. That explained why his initial attempts to seal the hull breaches had failed. The ship had literally pushed out his repair patches during the night, so I need to convince your ship to accept human materials? Impossible. The biomechanics require perfect compatibility. Only Valkyrie-grown components will integrate properly. Maybe, Taemin said, or maybe we just need to think differently. While they worked, Burra watched from the workshop window. After lunch, her curiosity finally overcame her shyness. She walked outside carrying a glass of water and one of her drawings. The pretty lady looks thirsty, she announced. Offering the glass to Yuna-Ke Tist, the alien stared at the child for a long moment. Her perfect features showed confusion and something that might have been discomfort. I do not require hydration at this time, she said formally. Bor tilted her head. You talk funny, but that's okay. Daddy says people from far away talk different. I am not people, I am Valkyrie. What's a Valkyrie? Uniketh's forearms moved in complex patterns as she tried to find simple words. Warriors from far stars. We are ... different from humans. You have 4 arms, Bor observed. That's really cool. Can you do 4 things at once? Despite herself, Uniketh demonstrated, picking up 4 different tools simultaneously and moving them in separate patterns. Bor clapped her hands in delight. Amazing! Look, Daddy, she can work on 4 things. Taemin smiled at his daughters. Enthusiasm. It is pretty impressive. Uniketh set down the tools quickly as if embarrassed by the attention. Valkyrie children do not interact with adults in this manner. How do they interact? Bor asked. They remain in learning centers until they are old enough for warrior training. Social contact is limited to prevent weakness. Bor frowned. That sounds lonely. Loneliness is a human concept. Valkyrie do not experience such feelings. But even as she said it, something in Uniketh's voice suggested otherwise. Bor held out her drawing. I made this for you. It's your ship, but not broken. The paper showed a child's version of the alien vessel, colored in bright blues and greens. Small stick figures stood beside it, smiling. One had 4 arms. Uniketh took the drawing with 2 of her hands, holding it carefully. She stared at it for a very long time. Why do you give this to me? She asked quietly. Because you're fixing your ship so you can go home, and because you look sad. I am not sad. I am Valkyrie. We do not feel sadness. Everybody feels sad sometimes. Bor said with the certainty that only children possess. It's okay. Daddy gets sad too, especially when he looks at Mommy's pictures. Uniketh's dark eyes shifted to Taemin. Your mate is dead? 2 years now, Taemin said simply. And you raised the offspring alone, without clan support? Yes. This is highly irregular? Among Valkyrie, offspring are raised by the community. Individual attachment leads to weakness in battle. We're not warriors, Taemin said. We're just people trying to get by. But how do you function without the support structure? How do you teach proper discipline? How do you prevent emotional compromise? Taemin looked at Bor, who was now attempting to teach Uniketh how to play a simple clapping game. The alien was trying to follow along with her four arms, creating a complex rhythm that made Biora giggle. "I don't prevent it," he said. "Emotions aren't something to fight against. They're part of what makes us human. Emotions make warriors weak. They create hesitation in crucial moments. Maybe, but they also give us reasons to fight in the first place." That afternoon, they made their first real breakthrough. Taemin had been thinking about Uniketh's comment regarding compatibility. If the ship rejected foreign materials because they felt wrong, maybe the solution wasn't to force acceptance. Maybe it was to make the materials feel right. "What if we don't try to replace the damaged parts?" he suggested. "What if we convince the ship to repair itself?" Impossible. The neural pathways are severed. The ship cannot process repair commands in the damaged sections. But what if we bridge the gap? Like a temporary nervous system that could carry the signals across the break? Uniketh's head tilted in a gesture that reminded Taemin of Bio-Ra when she was thinking hard about something. You would need biocompatible bridging material, and a way to integrate it with the existing neural network. What about this? Taemin held up a strand of fiber optic cable. It carries information like your neural pathways. And if we coated it with organic material from the ship itself, the ship would recognize its own cellular structure, Uniketh finished, understanding dawning in her voice. It might accept the bridge as part of itself. They worked until sunset, carefully harvesting small amounts of biological material from undamaged sections of the ship. Uniketh showed Taemin how to culture the cells in a nutrient solution, growing them into thin films that could coat the fiber optic strands. "Your approach is unconventional," she admitted as they prepared the hybrid biotechnical components. "But it shows understanding of principles that most species never grasp. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining different ways of thinking," Taemin said as darkness fell. They made their first attempt to install the improvised neural bridges. The ship responded immediately, its bioluminescent markings flickering as new pathways formed. Slowly, the severed sections began to reconnect. "It's working," Uniketh breathed. "The ship is accepting the modifications." Thora had fallen asleep on a blanket nearby, tired from a day of watching the adults work. Uniketh noticed the child, and something strange happened to her expression. The controlled mask she usually wore slipped for just a moment, revealing something that looked like longing. "She trusts easily," the alien said quietly. "Children usually do until they learn not to. Valkyrie offspring are taught wariness from birth. Trust is earned through combat prowess and clan standing. That sounds like a hard way to grow up." Uniketh picked up Baora's drawing from where she had carefully placed it on the workbench. "Perhaps, but it prepares them for the realities of the galaxy." "What realities?" For a moment, it looked like Uniketh might answer. But then her expression closed off again, becoming the controlled warrior mask she preferred. "The ship will be ready tomorrow evening," she said instead. "One more day of work should complete the neural integration." "Good," Taemin said, though. Part of him was surprised to realize he would miss her company. "I'm glad we could help." Uniketh looked at him for a long moment. "Your methods are strange, Taemin Park, but they are effective. I had not thought humans capable of such understanding. Maybe we're all more alike than we think." Perhaps," she said quietly, her eyes drifting back to the sleeping child. "Perhaps we are." But something in her voice suggested that similarities might be more painful than differences. The third day began with unexpected sounds from the ship. Instead of the quiet humming it had made while healing, the vessel now produced musical tones that rose and fell like a sad song. Taemin found Uniketh standing beside it, her four arms pressed against the hull. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "The ship dreams," she said without looking at him. "It remembers pain? Dreams? Your ship can dream?" "All living things dream. The ship dreams of home, of safety, of—" She stopped speaking and pulled her hands away from the hull. "It does not matter. We must complete the repairs." But as they worked that morning, Taemin noticed changes in Uniketh's behavior. Her movements were less controlled. Sometimes she would stop in the middle of a task and stare at nothing. Once, he caught her making soft clicking sounds that seemed almost like crying. "Uniketh," he said gently, "what's really wrong?" She was quiet for so long that he thought she wouldn't answer. Then, without warning, the words came out in a rush. "I am not traveling," she said. "I am fleeing." Tay-Min set down his tools. "From what? From shame? From failure? From the knowledge that I am no longer worthy to be called Valkyrie." The story came out slowly, in pieces. Uniketh had been a military commander, leading a small force on what should have been a simple mission. But everything had gone wrong. Her soldiers were killed. Her objectives failed. In Valkyrie society, such failure meant exile. "A warrior who cannot protect her own people is worse than dead," she said. "I should have died with them. Instead, I ran." "Running doesn't make you weak," Tay-Min said. "Sometimes it's the only smart choice. You do not understand. In my culture, there is no excuse for survival when others die. I am hollow now, empty, without honor." Tay-Min thought about his own losses, about the day the mining accident took me young from him, about the weeks afterward when he could barely function. "2 years ago, I lost my wife," he said quietly. "Mining accident. Tunnel collapse. I wasn't there when it happened. For months, I felt like I should have been with her. Like I should have. Died too." Uniketh's dark eyes focused on his face. "But you had offspring to protect." "Yes, or needed me. But that wasn't the only reason I kept going." "What was? Me young wouldn't have wanted me to give up?" "She loved life too much. Losing her was terrible, but throwing away my life wouldn't honor her memory. It would waste it. Honor is not the same for humans as it is for Valkyrie." "Maybe not, but love is the same everywhere." The words seemed to hit Uniketh like a physical blow. She turned away from him quickly, but not before he saw something break in her expression. "Love makes warriors weak," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Does it? Or does it give them something worth fighting for?" That afternoon, Bora brought them lunch. She had made sandwiches by herself, carefully cutting them into star shapes with cookie cutters. She was very proud of her work. "These are for the pretty lady," she announced, offering the plate to Uniketh, "because she looks hungry and sad." "I have told you I do not experience sadness," Uniketh said automatically. "Then why do your eyes look wet sometimes?" The direct question from the child seemed to catch Uniketh completely off guard. She stared at Bora for a long moment, then looked down at the star-shaped sandwiches. "Your offspring is very observant," she said to Tay-Min. "She gets that from her mother. Myung always noticed when people were hurting." "And what did your mate do when she noticed such things?" "She helped. Even when it was inconvenient, even when it was dangerous." Uniketh took one of the sandwiches and bit into it carefully. "This is acceptable food," she told Bora, formally. Bora beamed. "Daddy taught me how to make them." "Do you want to see my drawings of your ship flying?" Yes, I would like to." "See them." Bora ran to get her pictures, leaving the adults alone. Uniketh watched the child go with an expression that was becoming familiar, longing mixed with pain. "She reminds you of someone," Tay-Min said. It wasn't a question. Uniketh's control finally cracked completely. "I had offspring," she whispered. "A daughter. Her name was Caravel." "Had?" "She was taken during the mission that failed. The enemy captured her along with other young ones. I tried to rescue them. I tried. Her voice broke. I failed. They took her to their homeworld. I do not even know if she still lives." Tay-Min felt his chest tighten. "That's why you're running." "Not from military failure, from losing your child." In Valkyrie society, a warrior who cannot protect her own offspring is the lowest form of failure possible. I am forbidden from speaking her name, forbidden from mourning, forbidden from trying again. "But you're going to try again anyway." Uniketh looked at him sharply. "How did you know?" "Because you're not really running away. You're gathering information, learning about your enemies, preparing for another attempt. The data I carry could help locate the captured children, but I cannot act on it alone. And no Valkyrie will help a dishonored warrior. What about humans? Humans have no stake in Valkyrie affairs. Why would they risk their lives for alien children? Taemin looked through the window at Biora, who was arranging her drawings in careful piles. Because some things are more important than politics. Some things are universal. You speak of love again. I speak of being a parent. Of knowing that there's nothing you wouldn't do to protect your child. Uniketh followed his gaze to Biora. Your offspring would be left alone if something happened to you. Yes, yet you would still consider helping me. If it meant saving a child? Yes, I would consider it. Why? Tae-Min thought about how to explain. Because Biora is safe right now. She has food, shelter, people who care about her. Your daughter doesn't have those things. If I can help give them to her, then I should, even if it costs you everything. Even then. Uniketh made a sound that might have been a sob or a laugh. You are either the bravest human I have ever met or the most foolish. Probably both. That evening, as they put the finishing touches on the ship's repairs, Uniketh began telling Taemin about her daughter. Kiravel had been curious like Biora, always asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. She had been learning to fly small ships. She liked to draw pictures of distant stars. She would have been fascinated by your daughter, Uniketh said. Valkyrie children rarely meet other species. Maybe someday they can meet? Perhaps? If I can find her, if I can free her? If she remembers who she was before, she remember. Taemin said firmly, children are stronger than we think. And mothers don't forget their children, no matter how far apart they are. Uniketh touched the drawing Biora had given her, which she now kept carefully folded in a pocket. I hope you are correct. As the ship's systems came fully online, its hull began to glow with renewed health. The repairs were complete. By morning, Uniketh would be able to leave. But as they stood together watching the ship heal itself, both of them knew that something had changed. The warrior who had crashed in the storm was not the same person who would fly away at dawn. Taemin Park, Uniketh said formally. You have given me more than ship repairs. You have given me hope. What will you do now? What I should have done from the beginning. I will find my daughter. And I will bring her home. Alone? Uniketh looked at him with something that might have been the beginning of a smile. Perhaps not entirely alone. Perhaps it is time for this warrior to learn about human friendship. In the distance, Biora called for her father to come see the pretty lights the ship was making. As Taemin walked toward his daughter's voice, he didn't notice Uniketh's expression as she watched them together, but if he had looked back, he would have seen a warrior making a decision that would change all their lives forever. Dawn came too soon. Taemin woke to find Uniketh already loading supplies into her ship. The vessel hummed with health, its bioluminescent markings pulsing in steady, strong rhythms. The repairs had worked perfectly. You're leaving early? He said, walking across the dew-wet grass. The longer I remain, the more difficult departure becomes, she replied without looking at him. Her forearms moved efficiently, securing containers and checking systems. I've already stayed longer than wise. Will you be all right out there, alone? I am Valkyrie. We are born for solitude. But her words sounded hollow, like something she was trying to convince herself of rather than him. Biora emerged from the house, still wearing her pajamas. She ran to Uniketh and hugged one of her lower arms. Do you have to go? The child asked. Yes, little one. I have duties to complete. Will you come back and visit us? Uniketh knelt down so she was at Biora's eye level. I will remember you. Always, that is a promise. Biora smiled and ran back to the house to get dressed for school. Taemin helped Uniketh finish her preparations, neither of them speaking much. There seemed to be too much to say and no good way to say it. The ship's navigation system needs final calibration, Uniketh said, entering the cockpit. It will take a few minutes. Taemin followed her inside. The interior of the ship was as organic as the outside, with surfaces that curved and flowed like the inside of a seashell. Control panels grew from the walls like mushrooms, their surfaces rippling with symbols that changed as he watched. It's beautiful, he said. Valkyrie ships are grown, not built. Each one is unique, shaped by the pilot's neural patterns. She settled into what looked more like a nest than a pilot's seat. This ship knows me better than I know myself. As she began the calibration sequence, displays flickered to life around the cockpit. Most showed technical readouts that Taman couldn't understand. But one caught his attention immediately. It was a photograph. Or something like a photograph. The image shimmered with depth and movement, more real than any human picture. It showed a small Valkyrie child with Uniketh's distinctive facial markings. The child was laughing, her 4 small arms reaching toward whoever was taking the image. Double quotes Taman began. You should not look at that, Uniketh said quickly, reaching to shut off the display, but Taman had already seen enough. The child in the image had the same eyes as Beora when she was happy, the same expression of complete trust and joy. That's your daughter, he said quietly. While Uniketh's hand froze over the controls. For a moment she seemed unable to move or speak. Her name is Kiravel, she finally whispered. She was 6 cycles old when they took her. She liked to help me work on the ship. She called it her flying friend. She's beautiful. She was learning to read star charts. She wanted to be a navigator instead of a warrior. In Valkyrie society, this was unusual, but I thought perhaps times were changing. Perhaps there could be room for dreamers among my people. Taman studied the image more carefully. The child's face was bright with intelligence and curiosity. She looked nothing like the disciplined, emotionless warriors Uniketh had described. She looks happy, he said. I tried to give her something different than my own childhood. I wanted her to know joy before she learned duty. Uniketh's voice became bitter. Perhaps if I had trained her properly as a warrior, she would have been able to fight when the enemy came. She was 6 years old. No child that young should have to fight. Tell that to the monsters who took her. The pain in Uniketh's voice was so raw that Taman felt it like a physical blow. He looked at the image again, trying to imagine Beora in the same situation. The thought made him feel sick. Where did they take her? The hegemony worlds. They collect young from conquered species. Some become slaves, others are used for... She couldn't finish the sentence. We have to get her back. The words came out. Before Taman could stop them, Uniketh's head snapped around to stare at him. We? I said we have to get her back. Taman Park, you do not understand what you are saying. The hegemony is an empire that spans dozens of worlds. Their military is vast, their defenses are absolute. Even if we could somehow reach their territory, we would be 2 individuals against millions. So was David when he fought Goliath. I do not know this reference, old human story. Small person defeats giant enemy through cleverness and courage. This is not a story, this is reality. And in reality, small persons usually die when they challenge giants. But even as she spoke, something had changed in Uniketh's expression. The hopelessness was being replaced by something else. Something that looked almost like possibility. You have contacts, she said slowly. People who move through space without official notice. Smugglers, information traders. A few. And you understand systems that Valkyrie technology cannot interface with properly? Human tech is more adaptable than most species realize. It would be incredibly dangerous. Possibly suicidal, yes. Your offspring would be left alone. If we failed? Taman thought about Beora, safe in their house, getting ready for another normal day at school. Then he looked at the image of Kiravel, trapped somewhere in alien space, probably afraid and alone. My sister Yunji lives in the main colony. She's always said Beora could stay with her if anything happened to me. You would leave your child. For mine? I would try to save your child so that no parent has to feel what you're feeling right now. Uniketh made a sound that was definitely crying now, though she tried to hide it. Why? Why would you do this thing? Because it's right. Because children shouldn't be weapons in adult wars, and because ... He paused, trying to find the right words. Because I've watched you with Beora. I've seen how much you love your daughter. That love doesn't deserve to be punished. The chances of success are minimal. Maybe, but the chance of success if we do nothing is zero. Uniketh stared at the image of her daughter for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Stronger. I have intelligence about hegemony operations. Security protocols, ship movements. If we could reach their territory undetected... My friend Jinho runs supplies to the outer systems. His ship doesn't appear on official registries, and his brother Wu Jin used to work for Galactic Intelligence before he went independent. It would take months of preparation. Gathering resources, planning routes, learning enemy procedures. Then we'd better start soon. Uniketh touched the image of her daughter gently, as if she could reach through the display and hold her. If we do this thing, there is no going back. The hegemony does not forgive. They do not forget. Even if we succeed, we will be hunted. For the rest of our lives. Some things are worth being hunted for. Your offspring will grow up knowing her father died trying to save an alien child, or she grow up knowing her father helped reunite a family. Either way, she understand why I had to try. Uniketh closed the image display and turned to face him fully. Taemin Park, you are either the greatest fool in the galaxy or the bravest person I have ever met. I've been called worse. For the first time since he'd known her, Uniketh smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and more alive. Then we are partners in this foolishness, partners. They shook hands in the human custom. Then Uniketh showed him the Valkyrie gesture of alliance, touching all four of her palms to his two hands. I must warn you, she said. Once we begin this path, I will not be the same person who crashed in your field. I will become what I was trained to be, a warrior. And warriors do whatever is necessary to complete their missions. I understand. Do you? Because saving my daughter may require us to do terrible things, to people who might not deserve it. Can you live with that? Taemin thought about Kiravel, somewhere in enemy space, probably scared and alone. Then he thought about Boura. Safe and happy because she had been born in the right place at the right time? I can live with it, he said. Can you live with not trying? No, Uniketh said firmly. I cannot. Outside, they could hear Biora calling for her father to come see her off to school. Normal life continuing as if the universe hadn't just shifted on its axis. We'll need time to plan, Taemin said. And I'll need to arrange things for Biora. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then, in 3 weeks, we begin the most dangerous mission either of us has ever attempted. Together. As Taemin left the ship to see Biora off to school, he felt the weight of what he had just committed to. But he also felt something else. For the first time since Mi-young's death, he felt like he was truly alive again. Behind him, Uniketh sat alone in her ship, staring at the image of her daughter and planning their war against an empire. 3 weeks later, Taemin stood in his workshop for what might be the last time. Everything looked the same, but felt different. The tools that had shaped his life for years now seemed like toys compared to what lay ahead. Uniketh had spent the time gathering intelligence and modifying her ship for long-range infiltration. Her vessel now looked different, its bioluminescent markings dulled to avoid detection, its hull reconfigured for maximum stealth. She had also changed, becoming more focused and dangerous with each passing day. The hegemony slave markets operate on a rotating schedule, she explained, pointing to a holographic star map. Every 3 months, they move captured children to processing centers before final distribution. According to my sources, the next transport happens in 6 weeks. That doesn't give us much time. Time enough if we move quickly and avoid mistakes. Taemin had spent his own weeks making preparations. The hardest part had been talking to Biora. I have to go away for a while, he had told her one evening as they ate dinner. How long? I don't know, maybe a few months, maybe longer. Biora had looked at him with eyes too old for her 8 years. It's about the pretty lady's little girl, isn't it? How did you know? I saw her crying when she looked at her picture. The same way you cry when you look at Mommy's pictures. Taemin had been amazed, as always, by his daughter's perception. Yes, it's about her daughter. Are you going to bring her home? I'm going to try, Bora had nodded solemnly. Mommy would want you to help. Now, as he packed the last of his gear, Temin wondered if he was doing the right thing. Leaving Biora was the hardest thing he had ever done. But the thought of Caravel somewhere in alien space, afraid and alone, drove him forward. Your offspring understands the necessity? Uniketh asked, watching him work. She understands that sometimes adults have to do difficult things to protect children. She is wise for one so young. She gets that from her mother. His sister Yoonji had been less understanding. She had argued with him for hours, calling him irresponsible and crazy. But in the end, she had agreed to care for Bora, knowing that her brother's mind was made up. If you get yourself killed out there, I'll never forgive you, she had said. If I don't try, I'll never forgive myself. Jinho had been easier to convince. The smuggler had always been willing to take risks for the right price. When Taemin explained the situation, Jinho had simply nodded. Kids shouldn't be slaves, he had said. I'm in. His brother Woojin had been more cautious, but his intelligence background made him valuable for planning. Together they had mapped routes through hegemony space and identified potential infiltration points. The security around the processing stations is heavy, Woojin had warned. Military patrols, automated defenses, sensor networks. Getting in will be hard enough. Getting out with rescued children will be nearly impossible. Nearly impossible isn't the same as impossible, Taemin had replied, now, as their departure. Time approached. Uniketh ran through final equipment checks. She had trained Taemin in basic Valkyrie combat techniques over the past weeks, teaching him to move silently and strike efficiently. You are not a natural warrior, she had told him during one particularly brutal training session. But you learn quickly and you do not quit. That may be enough. Thanks for the confidence boost. I do not give false encouragement. You asked me to train you. I am training you to survive. The training had been painful, but necessary. Taemin's body ached from new muscles and old bruises. More importantly, his mind had adapted to thinking like a soldier instead of a mechanic. Combat is problem-solving under extreme pressure, Uniketh had explained. You already know how to solve problems. Now you must learn to do it while people are trying to kill you. As they prepared to leave, Bora came out to say goodbye. She had made another drawing, this one showing her father and Uniketh standing beside a small alien child. This is for when you find her, she said, handing the paper to Uniketh. So she knows she has friends. Uniketh accepted the drawing with all four hands, holding it as carefully as if it were made of glass. I will ensure she receives this. Promise? I promise. Bora hugged her father tightly. Be careful, Daddy. And bring the little girl home. I'll do my best. I know you will. You always do your best. Junji arrived to collect Biora, her face tight with worry and anger. She hugged her brother without speaking, then took Biora's hand. Ready to go see Aunt Yunji's house? She asked the child with forced cheerfulness. Will Daddy's workshop be here when he gets back? Yes, sweetheart. Everything will be here waiting for him. As his sister's transport disappeared toward the main colony, Taemin felt a piece of his heart break. But he also felt something else. Determination harder than steel, second thoughts. Uniketh asked quietly, No, you? Many, but not enough. To change my mind, they boarded Uniketh's ship together. The interior had been reconfigured for their mission, with additional supplies and equipment taking up most of the passenger space. Jinho and Woojin were waiting in their own vessel, a battered freighter that looked like it might fall apart but actually contained some very sophisticated modifications. Ready when you are, Jinho's voice came over the communication system. Uniketh took her place at the ship's controls. Her forearms moved across the organic interfaces with practiced ease, bringing systems online and preparing for departure. Once we leave this system, we will be committed, she said. There will be no safe place to retreat to. I understand. Do you? Because I must tell you something. If we are captured, I will not allow myself to be taken alive. And I will not allow you to be taken alive either. Taemin looked at her serious expression and nodded. I understand that too. Good, then we go. The ship lifted off smoothly, rising through the atmosphere toward the stars. Taemin watched his homeworld shrink below them, wondering if he would ever see it again. As they reached space, Uniketh performed the Valkyrie ritual of binding, formally declaring their alliance. She spoke in her own language first, then translated. By blood and honor, by shared purpose and common cause, I bind my fate to yours. Your enemies are my enemies, your victories are my victories. Until death or mission completion, we are one. I don't know the formal words, Taemin said, but I accept the bond. Then it is sealed. Their ships jumped to hyperspace together, beginning a journey that would take them across the galaxy to face an empire built on slavery and cruelty. They carried few weapons and fewer supplies, but they had something their enemies lacked. They had a cause worth dying for, and sometimes that was enough. First jump complete, Jinho reported. 12 more to reach the border, acknowledged, Uniketh replied. All systems nominal. Taemin settled into his seat and tried not to think about Bio-Ra, alone in a strange house, waiting for her father to come home. Instead, he focused on the image of Caravel that Uniketh had shown him. A little girl who needed help, a little girl they were going to save or die trying. Tell me about the hegemony, he said. They are everything the galaxy fears, Uniketh replied, cruel, efficient, absolutely convinced of their own superiority. Sounds familiar. The Valkyrie describe themselves the same way. Perhaps, but we do not enslave children. No, you just train them to be warriors from birth. Uniketh was quiet for a moment. You think my people are wrong? I think every species has room for improvement, including humans. And what would you improve about humans? Taemin thought about war and suffering and children sold as property. We could be braver. We could stand up for others more often. We could remember that being different doesn't mean being enemies. These are admirable goals. Yeah, well, let's see if I can live up to them. Outside the ship's windows, stars wheeled, passed in the strange patterns of hyperspace. Somewhere among those distant lights, a little girl waited for rescue. They were coming for her. All they had to do was survive long enough to reach her. 6 months later, Taemin stood in his workshop again. But everything was different now. The familiar tools were still there, but new equipment filled the spaces between them. Alien devices that hummed with foreign energy. Modifications that would have seemed impossible before his journey to hegemony space. The quantum resonator needs adjustment, called a voice from outside. The words were spoken in accented standard, but the pronunciation was getting better every day. I'll check it, Taemin replied. Setting down his welding torch, he walked outside to find Caravel working on a small racing pod she was building from salvaged parts. The young Valkyrie had grown in the months since their rescue mission, but she was still small for a 9-year-old. The trauma of her captivity had left marks that might never fully heal, but she was alive. She was safe. And she was learning to trust again. The power coupling keeps fluctuating, she said, pointing at a tangle of wires with one of her 4 small arms. Let me see. Taemin knelt beside her and examined the connection. You're mixing human and Valkyrie components. They don't always play well together, but they can work together. You proved that with Mother's ship. True, but it takes patience. And understanding? As he helped her fix the coupling, Taemin thought about the rescue mission that had brought them to this moment. The infiltration of the processing station had been even more dangerous than they had expected. Security had been tighter. Guards more numerous. Defenses more sophisticated, but they had succeeded. Barely the memory of finding Caravel in that holding cell still haunted his dreams. She had been so small, so frightened, pressed into a corner with a dozen other alien children. When Uniketh had called her name, the little girl had looked up with eyes that held no recognition. I do not know you, she had whispered in broken hegemony standard. For a moment, Taemin had thought they were too late, that the trauma had broken something essential in the child's mind. But then Uniketh had begun singing. A Valkyrie lullaby, soft and low, the same one she had hummed while working on her ship. And slowly, recognition had dawned in Kiravel's eyes. Mother? The reunion had been heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time, but they'd had no time to savor it. Alarms were already sounding. Security forces were mobilizing. They had minutes to escape before the entire facility went into lockdown. The running battle that followed had tested every skill Uniketh had taught him. Taman had been forced to do things that still troubled him. To hurt people who were just doing their jobs. To make choices that had no good answers, but they had gotten the children out. All of them. Daddy, the racing pod is working now. Bioraz. Voice interrupted his memories. His daughter came running from the house. Now 10 years old and filled with excitement about the hybrid technology that surrounded their daily life. The reunion with Biora had been the sweetest moment of Taman's life. She had grown during his absence, but she was still his little girl. Can we test it? Kiravel asked shyly. The young Valkyrie was still learning to interact with humans. Her own people's culture had taught her to be formal and distant, but life with Taman's family was slowly showing her different ways to connect with others. After lunch, Taman said, and only if your mother agrees. I am not her mother, came Uniketh's voice from the workshop doorway. I am her guardian. There is a difference. But her tone was gentle, and her dark eyes were warm as she watched. The two children examined their project together. The adjustment to life on Kepler 442c had been difficult for all of them. Uniketh was now technically a war criminal, wanted by both the hegemony and her own people. The Valkyrie government had disavowed her actions, claiming she had acted without authorization. They cannot acknowledge what we did without admitting their own failures, she had explained. It is easier to call me rogue than to face the truth about their abandoned children. So she had requested asylum in human space. The process had taken months of negotiations, but eventually she had been granted permanent refugee status. She was probably the first Valkyrie to ever choose exile among humans. Do you regret it? Taman had asked her one evening as they watched. The children play, regret saving my daughter? Never. Regret giving up your old life?